Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the MN Viking Zombie channel on YouTube and Twitch. I got the honors to do the intro today, so I'm very happy about that. My name is Kyle Smith. I'm a guest on Adam Carlson's channel. We're going to do a movie review of The Guilty on Netflix. How are you, sir?
Not too bad, not too bad. I don't know why this was under the horror section of Netflix.
Right.
It's a little bit more of a thriller, which is okay, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely a movie that we watched, and we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I picked the last one we did, The Trip. That was very interesting. And same thing, not really a horror, more of a thriller.
Which is weird because that seems like a movie I would have picked, and this seems like a movie you would have picked.
Yes. And I mean, to be fair, I did have the final thing, and I saw as soon as I see Jake Gyllenhaal, I'm gonna watch anything he's in. Disclaimer: I'm gonna nerd out a little bit. Jake Gyllenhaal is my favorite actor. I can't find a movie yet of his that I don't really like. Although this one is not in the top, tier of those. I think individually, while we break it down, you'll hear me talk about it. I think individually, he's.
Did I see Ethan Hawke in the cast list?
I have to look. I know I heard Bill Burr in there, and I confirmed that in the. He was one of the callers that.
Because I'll admit, I don't really know who Ethan Hawke is. If you ask me to name some Ethan Hawke movies, I'm like, I don't know. That's not my genre. His stuff.
So, okay, this is so funny you said that, right? So my best friend, shout out to Greg Caldarelli, man. He's my best friend from the military. Just moved back to Charleston, South Carolina yesterday. We were stationed there together as young men, and I showed him yesterday. My dad and I went to see the Kurt Warner movie. Disclaimer, it's very cheesy, but cool story for Kurt Warner if you're a football fan like Adam and I. But I showed him the new Ethan Hawke movie that's coming out in February because I'm going to go down to Charleston, see my friend, my longtime friend, and we're going to watch the Super Bowl. And I was like, hey, we got to go see this. I have a feeling if it doesn't let me down, this may be Ethan Hawke's like best movie to date. Now he is a lead actor in this one, but man, it looks good, and it's in that thriller category too. It's about child abduction, so that's going to be a good one.
Ooh,
oh yeah, I'll send you the link for it. It's really good. But yeah, as I was nerding out on Jake Gyllenhaal, I'll watch anything that he does, and I'll just say it right now. I'll do a reference to a movie if you guys haven't seen. If you want something that's actually going to be a thriller and it's going to focus in on if you can appreciate the art of an actor doing a lot of acting alone, which I think is one of the hardest things that actors can do, is make you intrigued by them just talking, which is what Jake does a lot in this movie by himself.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Ryan Reynolds movie Buried?
I have not.
So he's basically a contractor over in Iraq during the Iraq-Afghanistan war. He gets captured and he gets buried alive, and it is a lot of close, intense inside a coffin acting, and it really drove me to see, like, okay, he's not just the guy from Van Wilder. And I found myself reminiscing on that movie today because Jake does a lot of acting alone in this movie.
I thought Ryan Reynolds got some good chops. Have you seen Voices?
I have not. I don't know if I've heard of this.
That's a good one.
I'll add it to the list.
It shows a different side of him that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, this movie, I was expecting it to be a little bit more visual, but really there was no visual aspect of this movie whatsoever as far as gore or horror. It was all based on building this tension within a character that seemed very manufactured in a lot of ways because it threw a lot of situations at a character to kind of try to understand what's going on in their head. But let's be honest here, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, what's his first name again?
Joe.
Joe's not a very likable guy. He's kind of a jerk to everybody.
Yeah, he's not the most likable.
He's not liked by his ex. He's losing custody of his kids, and we finally understand why at the end. But we'll talk about that ending in a little bit too, because that's an interesting part of this movie. But the main plot of the movie is that he's a 911 dispatcher. He gets a call, and it's a woman who she's talking about how she's getting abducted without getting abducted, giving code words and answering yes/no questions, and how she's got her kids at home alone, really young kids, and how everything's so scary. And this all builds off him not wanting to lose someone and just doing everything he can to try to make sure that this woman can be safe and get home to her kids. That's the main premise.
Yep, that's the main part. That's how the story starts off. He's taking these random calls. I like And this is a shout out again to my buddy Greg. This is what he does. He's not a police officer now. This, I believe, is in California. That's where it's based out of.
Yes.
The reason that Jake, or Joe in this instance, is behind the desk is because he's awaiting an investigation to be done, which should conclude the following morning after the shift. So he's on the very last night of his suspension. He's going to go through a court case. We find out later from his partner, whom he calls, as the story builds, that he's kind of this is kind of a thing that cops do. And I learned this from the military. If you're in trouble, they have to find employment for you somehow, obviously innocent until proven guilty. So this is kind of the punishment. Hey, you got to ride the desk. You got to answer calls. Trust me when I say, from being a military cop for a very long time, you don't want to be behind the desk. It's built for certain people, and it can be served as a punishment, especially if you're a go-getter, which Joe seems, I think the only good positive thing about this film, minus him loving his daughter, you can tell he has a deep care for his daughter, is he wants to try to solve problems and get rid of the bad people. But the flip side of that is Joe's a very much emotional thinker, emotional actor, as in acting on these impulse decisions and not really thinking things through. He's very intense, and that comes back to bite him in the butt a few times in this
He's
movie.
not polite either.
No, not at all.
That person in the desk next to him, he manipulated him, being like, hey, let's be friends, let's go get a beer. Oh, by the way, can I take this call in the other room so I can be private and break rules?
Yeah. Asking him for information that he didn't have to give him about his computer. The guy accepts the apology real quick, says, yeah, let's grab a beer. And then he just uses him. And he did the same thing to the nice woman on the phone for the highway patrol dispatch. He was very rude to her the entire movie. And we, in that career field, I can get the stress of there's people's lives on the line. We have to be short, direct, quick, but there's still a way to go about that. And this is me reaching hard because I'm not a police officer, and I do love anyone who decides to do that voluntarily, because I did it for a while and I understand the double-edged sword it is. But if you're going to be that way with people on the phone, how are you to people in real life? Which we find out later. We'll get to that. I don't want to spoil it yet, but
we got the guy that took the tumble on his bike and really messed up his knee, and he had no patience for that guy.
He told him to Uber. I mean, he's not wrong. You save a lot of money. Life hack: if you have a minor injury, do not call 911. Take an Uber to the hospital. It's going to save you about $1,000. But I think in that situation, in that job, especially you're on a recorded line. That's the first thing I said. Being a former guy who does something near this is like, dude, they're going to have everything you said on audio file.
But here's something that didn't make sense about that movie to me. During that call, he said, when you call back, you get the same caller, you get the same dispatcher or whatever when you call back. So why did those other calls go outside?
Why did he get different calls to him? Did it just fall into his lap? That's really weird. What if you have a terrible experience with a guy like Joe, and you just keep getting him? What if you have a real emergency? It was entertaining. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of Hollywood in this movie, but yeah, as far as the plot, I get the idea of building tension. And I think when it comes down, and I'm learning this as a movie liker and viewer myself, is casting plays a huge, huge part. Probably the biggest piece outside of the actual story. Is the story written well? And who's going to paint it for you? And who's going to be that paintbrush to portray that? And I got to say, this movie did leave me a little empty at the end because I wanted to see more. I wish it was a little longer. And I usually don't say that. It's usually
they jumped at the end.
Yeah.
Let's lead up to the end, and then let's talk about that, because
sure.
Okay, so the major twist, the midpoint twist in this movie was that it wasn't the man who abducted the wife, that
Right.
she was the one who has a mental illness, did something absolutely terrible to her son Oliver, and he was trying to get her to go back to the mental health clinic.
You get very invested, especially if you just take the information and the pieces that you're given, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this poor lady's been abducted. There are children at home. What's her name? Emily in the movie. Emily and Henry are two parents. They both have their issues. Henry has a daunting past with violence and domestic abuse. He lost the case to get his kids. That'll pull at your heartstrings if you're a parent or you have kids that you like in your family. And then the kids are at home. You actually hear one of the children talking to 911. The points to grab you and pull you in and invest you in the story is absolutely there. And we find out at the beginning, we think that Emily's been abducted by Henry against her will. He has a weapon, all these things. And then about just halfway past the movie, maybe 2/3 of the way, you find out that's not what happened at all. We find out Emily has a mental illness, and we think that she's murdered her son, thinking that she was curing him of a sickness. And at that point, what I really liked about the movie was you have those couple of seconds, those 6 to 7 seconds, where you're just like, holy crap, this is not what we thought it was. And it really lets you digest, because my feeling of it came, and I just kind of sat my hand down and was like,
No,
oh,
was that
no.
twist as obvious to you as it was to me?
I figured that. Here's my thing. I'm getting spoiled now from doing so many movies and watching so many movies and doing reviews. I'm waiting for something to turn, because that's just the formula now for these big movies. But I don't know, man. I think it was just the nuance of the snakes. He had the snake, and I was like, what the hell are they talking about? And then right before I realized what they were going to do, I was like, oh, they got me. They got me again. Damn it. And I felt bad for the kid. I have a little boy, and I'm like, oh, no. And then I felt so bad for the character. Normally I'd say normally a lot of people would hate Emily after that. And I felt so bad for her, because you could tell the woman who played her was very, very good at portraying the confusion in her voice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole situation was
Henry
weird
too. You want to hate Henry at the very beginning. You're like, this guy kidnapped a woman. And
they paint those conceptions of who these people are, and you buy into them at first. Then as soon as you start to learn a little bit more about them, you kind of figure out this isn't right.
Right.
And Joe was doing so much to get help over to the house of where the girl and Oliver were, the little girl. And that to me was really awesome, because a lot of the message outside of Joe was stay in your lane, do your job.
Yep.
And we hear that all the time. But to go above and beyond sometimes is frowned on, and that's strange.
Yeah. Especially in that job, I kind of still have a very light taste of it, maybe at the end of The Opposite Neighborhood in relation to where I'm at now. But being with the government and stuff, you don't do overtime unless you're told. Basically, you don't do anything unless you're told yes or no. And if you overstep bounds, I mean, immediately there are going to be consequences. So I thought about that for him and being in that spot before. I loved his dedication, because he genuinely wanted to help find the little girl and get Emily help.
For someone on a punishment, they were already rolling the dice quite a bit.
So much. Calling former friends and bosses and pulling strings, and you really see the compass of morality come out. And that's probably the biggest investment point of the movie is, I think rationally, the older I get, the more I stay on the safe side of things. Calling his old boss saying, go to these 2 houses, telling his boss what to do. Here's old sergeant. And then say, kick in the door. He's like, I'm not going to do that, man. He's like, what do you need? He's finally saying, hey, you need to calm down. We can do certain things we can't. And like, to your point, he's already overstepping boundaries. At that point, I'm invested for Joe, because I'm like, dude, you gotta let these guys try to handle it. And the sad part of this movie, and I think the one thing that was overbearingly true, just kept jumping into my brain, was you can't save everybody. You want to, but with jobs like these and agencies like these, dude, you don't have the resources to do all that stuff.
What did you think of that corny, terrible line of out of nowhere, the random person comes in, broken people save broken people?
Yeah. At the end, I mean, we can talk about the ending too now. It's a decent segue if you want. For them to have such a conflicting relationship and her to be the stern overseer of the shift manager position, I liked it more when there was just the simple direct, I forget her name, the highway dispatcher, the lady.
Yeah.
She said, we got her. Man, what a sigh of relief. Because we really thought Emily was going to commit suicide there, and she did not.
She was about to jump off the overpass because she realized the blood on her was Oliver's, and she realized what she had done.
Her young son's blood all over her, and finally has this realization she harmed her child. And you hear the sirens coming. She said, I'm looking out over all these cars. I mean, I'll share a personal moment with you. My brother and I saved a woman from doing this exact same thing. And this was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Obviously, she wasn't super high, but it's over an interstate overpass. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
So I was drawn back to that moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to jump. You hear that sigh of relief, but to your point for that line, did that have to be in there? No, that's that one little extra Hollywood shove to make all the people who couldn't get this movie, even how simply laid out it was, be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna say that now. Like, yeah, I could have did without that.
But now you've got that big clashing finish of him being able to talk her down, and it was because I don't know if this felt tacked on or important or not. The whole subplot with his upcoming court case, because he could have just told the story about him losing his daughter to the woman on the phone, and struggling for wanting to see her and how much kids are important and all that. But instead, he tells her the story of him hurting a boy, and
Yeah, young
that
man.
being why he's having his problems in court.
The reason that I like that particularly was, it. I like the nuance of telling a stranger such deep information. The circumstances of the situation allowed that, especially with his job and with
But then he
Emily's.
told her that he had snakes in his stomach.
Yeah, and I guess I got that trying to. I guess he was trying to save her to say, "Hey, he knows that he lied to her, and that it did not sit well with me." But for the overall purpose of trying to get her to not jump, I believe if he had told her, "No, those weren't it. Like you did this," I believe she would have ended it. And
But do you believe that part of the story was added to kind of, I don't know, I don't know how to say this without being too offensive in some ways, but that ending with him deciding to go in and plead guilty to assaulting a person, it felt very topical as far as current events, and felt like something
oh
that was
yeah,
tacked on, definitely just to get attention of people that are either way on police brutality right now, and cash in on that little bit of a controversy. And that kind of sat a little wrong with me, because
yeah.
I felt like the meat and potatoes of the movie was good.
Hmm.
And then I kind of got that last taste in my mouth where I'm like, I don't really like Joe. I'm glad he was able to save that woman, and hopefully she can get some help, and the kids can do what they need to do. And that guy that's trying so hard to be a better person and help his wife and help and try to help out his kids. I hope he can turn his life around. And I've got all that going in my head, and then I've got, okay, so this guy's probably going to prison now.
Yes, I will agree with you. I know what you're trying to say. We don't want to say anything that's going to step on toes, but yeah, I don't think that this movie in particular, Jake, and I know it said it was either written or produced by him too, which is awesome. Um, excuse me. I don't think that this was particularly like we should do that. That's going to get trends on Twitter. I, I think it was something that was just kind of out of the air, that was kind of floating in the idea room. Well, what can we do to spin it? Why would he want to tell this woman such a deep personal story? What is that story? How can they connect? I
But
think
you
it
see
was
that from him. But then you
right.
see like the willingness to have a real open and honest communication with
Mhm.
his ex while they're
Yeah,
having issues. And where was that disconnect? Why couldn't he be as affectionate and caring and all that when it mattered with his family? I mean, I know that people make mistakes all the time, and I get that. Uh, but this character seems all over the place, and I
absolutely.
don't know if it's. They're trying to paint this picture of him being an emotional wreck,
Mhm.
and
Super
maybe
stressed
that's
out.
possibly good, because really a lot of the logic goes right out the window in this movie, and you can tell that the character is acting impulsively and just out. It's
He
out of
kind of lost
goodness.
it. He
Yeah,
kind of just lost it in this movie, which is wild because he seemed to at the start of this movie, and it's a slow burn, it's an avalanche, but he seemed to have it all together. He's heard all these before. He knows to go down his checklist. The guy that was getting robbed by a prostitute, and he didn't want to tell his wife. That funny how he was describing the woman. There was a little bit of comedy there. Um, yeah, he just seemed to have lost it right before the day. And I don't know if it's one of the things about this movie. I'm going to have so many questions as to why this, what brought this here, and why did it come in. That's what I'm left with. But he seemed to come unhinged, and I'm going to blame it on just me watching the movie is the stress of I guess the burden that I feel like he's carrying now that the movie's over and I have time to digest it. he was carrying the burden of these guys were going into court with a story, not to necessarily lie, but to cover his ass. Because remember, everyone in the department was saying, hey, you'll be back on the road tomorrow. And then he kept getting that call from the reporter, and he was angry with her. So, I just want your side. I just want your side. And he's like, stop calling me. They had something rehearsed, him and his partner, and they were going, I mean, right to the end. This is like 7 a.m. before a court date. And they had everything scripted, and I think he just became unhinged. I don't know if that's maybe the stress and the weight of it all just made him collapse. And he's like, I just need to be honest. Obviously, this phone call had something to do with it.
But also at the end, you notice the national media, when they were talking about what was going on, they mentioned his court case and not anything about the woman being saved from the overpass and that situation. So again, you've got another instance of kind of pandering to an audience with media bias and all that. So yeah, this movie had a lot of really passionate speeches and dialogue that was powerful. But to me, the messages that felt tacked on at the end, it did feel a little tacky to me. Perhaps it's because as I was watching this movie, my head was kind of like back in the Colin Farrell phone booth days.
Well, you know what's weird too? I Googled the poster, obviously the background here. I used something for this week.
And it looks great.
Thanks, man. Thank you. That means a lot because this is your show, but I didn't want to use this one. This is the one we always use if you guys haven't seen.
The blood splatter,
This has nothing to do with this movie. And I was like, we gotta get something cool in here. So they make Jake's face highlighted through all these and it says listen carefully because he says that a lot in the movie, which I thought was really cool. But anyways, I Googled the for the poster for this to try to find a good photo. Did this come out as like a European film too before? Because
I'm honestly not sure.
I'm gonna have to look at that because I feel like, no offense, because I love Jake and I'm still gonna like this movie. I feel like the European version's probably gonna be better than what this one was.
Oh man,
but yeah, I mean, desired, I guess to say.
I wasn't picking up my phone throughout the movie. I wasn't looking to do something else or to be distracted. I actually sat and watched this entire movie, and although I felt like the twist was a little bit telegraphed and some of the other stuff was tacked on, I'm still glad I watched this. I thought it was a decent movie. It's not one I'd run out and recommend for people to watch, but if you need to waste a little bit of time and you feel like watching something a little bit intense, this could do the trick for you.
I agree. That's well said. I don't think that this is like the new Spider-Man. Everyone's raving about it, right? You need to go see it. It's so good. It's so good. This is not one of those movies where I'm going to say, these are your plans this weekend. Don't make anything. I'm not going to call anyone and say that. But
now, I will say, if you like the new Ghostbusters, go watch that Ghostbusters Afterlife. That is good.
You liked it?
I liked it a lot.
I was happy with it, man. And you know what? What was even cooler for me is having the kid from Stranger Things be like a sort of main character. Yeah. Man, good for him. You know, I love that series, and it's right in the niche of, okay, you can see he's got different acting, and it's a bigger role and a bigger production, but he's still so good. I loved it, and I loved the homage to the guys at the end and having them come back. God, that was cool. It hit me right in my feel spot, you know.
But yeah, The Guilty doesn't go on that must-watch list. It's a movie that I think you can enjoy, but you're not going to go and talk to your friends about unless maybe it might be interesting to watch if you are part of a police unit or rescue unit or something like that, and maybe then you can like kind of follow it a little bit more intensely from a different angle. But from a casual viewing standpoint, the developments happen at a nice pace. Yep. You're not left with a lot of time gaps in between. It's a lot of phones ringing, if you're into phones ringing. I know that people with dogs would probably like to have this movie on because dogs like to bark at the phone.
That's funny. I have to give a shout out to my other friends. So Greg, obviously, and then my friend Alyssa. She's in the Air Force still. They both hated it. I asked them today about it. Well, as soon as I started, they're like, this movie sucks. And I was like, oh, God, well, I'm about to start it. And they're like, well, you should have said that after. I wouldn't have spoiled it. I was like, I'm not going to carry your thought in the movie into something I don't know what's going to happen yet. But they did not like it. I hate for the channel when we have to give out of 10 ratings. We do the the 10th of the decimal system here, like a 6.1
Right.
or something like that. But I don't hate this movie. What I was going to say, I didn't want to interrupt you because I know I've been very vocal in this episode, but
Oh no, I'm glad you've been talking.
if you want to see a movie and you want to study the performance of a person, I think it's so impressive that 90% of the movie is just him. And
Right.
I'm biased because I said at the beginning, he's my favorite actor, but he can do everything in this movie. I didn't hear anything where he said stuff that was funny. I laughed with him at the beginning part, which we mentioned, but there's an intensity there. There's a focus. You can see the anger. The anger was portrayed so very well. And then you feel a little bit of compassion at points based on the scenes that are happening in the circumstance. But I would say go into this with a notepad and just appreciate, okay, take yourself out of it and say, I'm the director or the producer of this movie. That's got to be hard to do that mostly by yourself. That's wild to me. Because if you just filmed you or I just walking around saying lines, it would be super boring. So I find that to be fascinating to see people who do that for a living at a really high level.
Yeah, the cinematography left a bit to be desired because any scene that wasn't really based in that 911 dispatch unit was grainy or blurry for that purpose entirely. So your focus was on Joe and the situation inside the 911 place. So anything that happened outside there, which honestly I'd probably rather not seen at all.
Yep.
I'm glad that it was kind of like not in focus or not absolutely clear. So you only really got the movie from his perspective.
This is one of those, I don't know why I'm going back to this, but when I used to read the Goosebump books back in the day, I had to fill in parts with my imagination. You don't see any of the callers, to my knowledge, in this. You have to imagine, what does Emily look like? Where is she at in the van when she's being abducted? What is the poor little girl? What does she look like? You know, I was trying to imagine.
I think
these
they show
characters.
Henry for a small amount.
I'll have to go back. It's not fresh in my mind. But I'm trying to think of, like, you know, hey, they pulled over at some point. Where are they at? I'm trying to hear and paint this photo. So that part I appreciated. Maybe I'm not like the biggest fan of it, but
how did you feel about that aggressive moment where he told her to put her seatbelt on and pull the parking brake?
I felt the desperation in it. I don't know how much that would have helped. And remember, at that point in the movie, we thought that Henry was the bad guy and he had abducted her. So
right.
I'm like, hey, dude, I mean, that's a good idea, I guess, if you have that at your disposal. But
that also means that he gave up on his fellow people in the chase and pursuit of that car or that van.
Oh, it's very frustrating. That's the other part of the movie. You're working with so little information. They had such a small percentage chance to come out of this with what would be a victory.
Right.
Yeah, that was tough.
Now, let's be honest here. After that night of work, with him not going home when his shift was over and all the strings he pulled and how he talked to everybody, he was getting reprimanded after that by somebody for something.
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to say this because it's going to paint bad on the police officers, but it would be one of those things that's kind of like Captain America. I just watched last week with my son. He goes and rescues all the soldiers from Nazi Germany, breaks a lot of rules, but everyone is saved. So he's like, hey, I'm turning myself in for disciplinary action. And I can't remember his name. He's the colonel in that movie. He's like, won't be necessary. I think at the end of the day, if you save those people, cool. But I mean, for what unfolds 3 minutes later and we find out he's guilty, I think that's the least of his worries because he's going to prison.
Right.
Yeah. He should be. God, he's talking like a jerk to everyone.
And I understand that he was panicked and that he was just doing everything he could try to do. But, man, it's... You are exactly right when you say this movie is a character study. It's a character study of Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Jake Gyllenhaal portrays him is he does an excellent job. There are a few times where I think it might have been a little over the top, but you know, that's the way that's the way movies go sometimes. I'm happy. I'll give this my grade here. I'll go with maybe I liked it, didn't love it, probably won't watch it again. I'm not going to give it a grade under 50, or grade under 5. So let's go 6.6.
You'll give it more than me again, man. This is great. One day I'm going to say a number in my head. I'm just going to like, yes, I got it right. I'm going to give it just under a 6. We'll do like a 5.9. This movie, looking at it now, I feel like it could have been loads better, but I see the direction that they went. It's kind of like a tree branch, right? You mentioned it too. You had the better verbiage. I just was fangirling. It's a character study. It's a single actor doing 90% of alone screen time. I think they picked a really good actor for it. I think he acted well, but some of the stuff that we tacked on at the end really brings it down for me. I need to know why he felt compelled after talking to this woman that he needed to confess his sins. Why? Just because you're a dude, you have calls like that.
Yeah, it didn't make much sense.
You have calls like that every day. You know, why this woman in particular? If I would have had a little more clarity there, probably would have jumped it up higher. But Joe's a jerk. I didn't like that. He played the jerk well, but yeah, like you said, not going to watch it again. I'm glad I saw another film in Jake's library of stuff, but I promise to you guys that watch this, we've had somebody watching this whole time. We'll get back to horror movies. Adam gave me a list of 3. I think I have one in mind that I know is a horror movie next we discussed before, but as soon as I saw my favorite actor, I was like, nope, that's the one. I'll watch that immediately. So
I try not to watch too many trailers or dive too much into movies before I put them on the list to watch. And the fact this was in the horror category is kind of disappointing to me.
Yep.
Because I feel like it was poorly categorized, but I do enjoy thrillers as well, and I felt this was a decent thriller.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't regret making this call, but I feel like we got to start steering back onto the horror, slasher, gore kind of stuff. So,
see, this is the thing with Netflix that's really funny. So I don't know if you've watched this. Spoiler alert, you guys can make fun of me. I hope someone roasts me for it. I love rom-coms. That cheesy, dry comedy, I love it. I like Fool's Gold with Matthew McConaughey. They had that under action and adventure on Netflix. Because I sent it to you guys, I sent it to you and Kyle in the Purple People podcast chat. So my favorite childhood movie outside of Roger Rabbit and Hook is on Netflix. It's called Last Action Hero. It's a freaking classic from Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love that movie. I'm going through looking for stuff the other night, and Fool's Gold is under action and comedy after I pass romance. And I'm just like, this is not an action or adventure. This is not an action nor an adventure. What the hell? So I think if we are looking under the horror stuff, I know you don't want to, but we might have to like screen the previews for 30 seconds.
We may have to start doing that if we're doing this Netflix here.
I won't spoil it for whoever's next and won't make any guarantees, but you mentioned one to me and it had to do with Hornets or Wasps. Let's do that one. We've been playing around with that for a while.
You've been talking about that one for a little bit, so yeah, I like that.
I'm good with that. I think it'll be scary. It looked pretty intense on the trailer, but hey, this was a good one. If you want to do a character study and you want to see really good acting, whatever, it's not going to blow you away, but it's intense. It is a thriller.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to anyone who tuned in. We didn't get any conversation in the chat today. This was a little bit of a stranger movie for us because it's not one that we would typically carry. So I kind of understand there wasn't a lot of people in there. Plus, I don't know how many people have really watched this film. So I don't know if a live viewing of a live conversation about a movie you haven't watched probably isn't much fun. So hopefully we can come back next time and give you a little bit more of a heads up as to what we're going to watch. I tried to do so over on my Twitter, MN Viking Zombie. So if I'll try to post up as soon as we decide what movie we're watching. So hopefully you can check it out and come join in the conversation with us, because honestly, interacting with people and hearing their opinions to go with ours and asking some questions, how we feel about things, it's some of the best stuff ever. I mean, over on the Purple People podcast, we do that, and it makes it so much easier and so much more fun.
We'll do it too. Just to piggyback on what Adam's saying, I schedule these things. I'm the host of this, and what I'll do next time, we'll set on a time, and we'll try to give at least half an hour to an hour buffer to let it do any notifications that anyone might have, because we just went straight into this. So it's kind of what we get for not scheduling it. Like, we do with the Purple People podcast for Vikings football. We're going to schedule it out 8 hours in advance, a day in advance, and people are going to know. So we'll try to get the reminder out there for the people that subscribe and want to jump in.
For those of you on my Twitch, also, I am doing an internet upgrade here soon, probably within about a month. So I should be doing a lot more streaming. I'll be doing some gaming streaming finally, because right now my internet cannot handle streaming from the Xbox Live or from my laptop very well. So after that, I'll probably be streaming a lot of Overwatch, maybe some Apex. We'll be getting back into the Jackbox games thing, and I always have a lot of fun doing that. And I'm excited to join the people who have high-speed internet.
I can't say anything, man. I'm in between buying a home and selling with my dad, so I'm at the mercy of Spectrum right now. But it's all right. I'm glad it works.
I'm glad that you guys are willing to host these things, because right now I can't. I absolutely can't. Honestly, I'm surprised I can guest as well as I can.
Hey, luckily, knock on wood, there's been nothing interrupting you, so that's good. I'm going to give you a line that people used to tell me when I was a young man at the gates of Air Force bases. And I mean this in a good way, because when people said it to me, I wanted to throw a brick through their car. But there's a lot of weather that's going around the country. And for whatever reason, I have a window open with the fan on now. So I'm very lucky. I know it's cold where you are. It's cold in the Northeast.
Oh, yeah. Got a big snowstorm today.
Whew. Please, guys, stay warm, stay safe, and bundle up and prepare. I know that's no news to you, but hey, I'm thinking about you guys. Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, I got plenty of food and water. I'm happy staying here. I got the heat kicking. I got some happy kitties. That's what it's all about.
And a good beer.
Yeah.
That beer game is strong.
It's white here though. I'm not one of those people that's like, I'm the color of the beard, but
you got to take it. I'm getting it here, and then you can't see it because it's kind of far away. But I told my brother today I've got about 10 white hairs in my mustache.
I'm
33. We just got to roll with it, I guess.
I'm in my 40s, so I guess the gray hair is going to come. Plus, my dad had the whitest hair ever.
Did he have a good thick head of hair though?
Not when he got older. It thinned out quite a bit.
Okay. Well, we're going to let you.
But this beard definitely looks good on the cam. I mean,
yeah, it does.
Doesn't usually look that good, so I'll take that.
Got that nice V going down. It's good stuff, man.
But me and this beard, and maybe Kyle Smith, I hope, will be back to talk about another horror movie probably pretty soon. So, in the meantime, stay bloody.